and we're so happy to have you all with us today. So under the high patronage of His Highness Sheikh Ahmed Al Maktoum, my chairman, Sir Anthony Ritossa, is very pleased to present you with our Ritossa Family Office Virtual Keynote Panel number 4. And today's theme is going to be all about real estate, thinking outside the box in this investment environment or climate that we're in. And with this, I would just like to do a quick little introduction, hello, let's say, to our dear friend, Mr. Mohammed Alali, who is the CEO and advisor to Sheikh Ahmed Al Maktoum International Investments Enterprise UAE. And of course, we're very glad to have with us Mallorca Properties. And of course, we're very, very happy to have with us our Grand Ambassador for the Monaco Conference, that is no other than His Royal Highness, Prince Michel of Yugoslavia. So, and with this, I'm going to hand over to Hussein Saeed, who's CFA, who is our moderator and also chairman and summit chairman for Dubai and Master of Ceremonies. Hussein is also the CNBC Arabia anchor and chief market strategist at FXTM in Dubai. So Hussein, the panel is all yours.
Thank you, Vanessa, and to all the panelists joining us today for this exciting discussion. Our panel today will be focused on the real estate investments in this current tough environment. Lots of topics will be covered in this session, especially given the nature of this health crisis that may lead probably to lots of disruptions and shifts within the real estate industry. We always try to compare events to past events, but now when we're looking at this kind of a crisis, probably it is of different nature and probably will have a different kind of impact on the real estate, and it will need a kind of different approach probably from investors as well. By the end of this panel, I'll be leaving 15 minutes for Q&A. You can post your questions at any time during this panel discussion, and we will get back towards your questions at the end. Just make sure that your question will be addressed to only one speaker. And I would like to start with a quick introductions from our speakers. Let it be 30 seconds or so, and then we start with Hadi.
First of all, I would like to thank His Highness Sheikh Ahmed for patronizing this event, and to Sir Anthony for having, I think this is the 4th one, and for the hardworking lady Vanessa. And I am so pleased that the moderator is Hussein. I know him for a few years, and he's good to keep always things on time. So hopefully we will finish right on time. So I'm very, very happy to be in this panel.
Sure. Hadi, can you just give us a short introduction about yourself, please?
Well, I am a multi-family office with my 7 sisters and 5 brothers. We have our group of company. And then I have my own company, Al Hayat Group, which is something which started with $1 million from my father's. Almost in 1994, and it is in about 8 different sectors. We have real estate, construction, engineering, fashion, interior design, technology, and hospitality and travel. So sure. I have been associated with this conference of Anthony for many years. I follow him where he goes. And I'm very pleased that he has won the best award for conference around the world. Congratulations.
Thank you, Hadi. Let me move to George. I'm just moving according to where I see the screen. George Azar.
Hello, everybody. My name is George Azar. I'm the chairman and CEO of Gulf Sotheby's International Realty in the UAE. My background was 20 years on the banking side out of Geneva. So I worked mainly on family office and sovereign wealth funds for probably 20 years before I entered the real estate industry in 2013 in the UAE. So that's my background. So what we do here at Gulf Sotheby's is we focus mainly on the very high net worth individuals for their personal and investment needs globally. And we are a company with over 1,000 offices in over 100 countries. And you know, we service all our clients in the region.
Great. Fakhruddin?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sir Anthony, and thank you from Office of His Highness Sheikh Ahmed. Thank you, Vanessa. I'm very happy and proud to be in the panel. I'm chairman and founder of Mallorca Properties. We are a boutique real estate. We focus on commercial real estate. We've been in Dubai since 2002. At the same time, they open up freehold opportunities. And after closing several deals in terms of commercial, recently we expand our market to Western Europe and UK.
Great. Ronald?
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here on this panel. We're an esteemed, certainly an esteemed panel indeed. I'm Ronald Barrett. I'm the Chief Executive and founding partner of ProInvest, which is the largest vertically integrated platform in hospitality based in Australasia. We're close to 2 billion assets under management. We're currently the largest platform in Australia and developing quality limited service hotels in partnership with Intercontinental Hotels Group. And we're currently raising funds even in this difficult market.
Awesome. Dr. Shuja?
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I'm the advisor to the CEO of Amala. That's one of the giga projects of the Public Investment Fund. And my major role at Amala is to identify and work with strategic partners, including co-investment as well as with lenders, across all the aspects of the projects, whether that's infrastructure, some specific hospitality assets, residential, staff villages, shared services. It's a giga project the size of about 70 kilometers one side and 10 another. So one of a very large project out of Saudi.
All right. I don't know, Grant, shall I skip you from the introduction? You can go ahead, Grant.
Thank you very much. And thank Anthony for having me be part of this. I was in Dubai last year with you and really it was a pleasure working with you. We're located in Miami, Florida, 8,000 units under management, almost $2 billion. Crowdfunded using Instagram and Facebook, $1/3 billion in cash in 20 months. Money is still being invested today. Our apartments are running at 7% occupied and 98.6% collected, despite all the bad news that you see in the world today. So it's a pleasure to be here. I hope to somehow add some value to the panel here, my esteemed colleagues.
Of course, you will grant Hamid.
Hello, everyone. This is Hamid. I'm the CEO and founding partner of Highness Holding. Thanks for the opportunity to be here, Sir Anthony. Thanks for the opportunity for me to wear a jacket after 3 months. You know, it's been a long time, but this is the first time I've dressed up, you know, after a long time. So in Highness Holding, we are active in many aspects of real estate companies. We have multiple companies that are related to real estate. You know, we invest in startups, prop techs, we have design company, we have asset management, we have brokerage. So it's an ecosystem of different companies that caters to mainly real estate developers. And it's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Hamid. And finally, Nicola, she joined us. Nicola, just a brief introduction, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone from Singapore. Apologies for my lateness. I can't blame it on lockdown because I'm locked down or trying to get to the office in the evening. Yes, I represent Nico Design Group based in Singapore. We work extensively between Asia Pacific, and we specialize in actually designing accommodations, so hospitality and leisure projects, master planning, architecture, and interiors. And it's been a very exciting times so far.
Indeed, it is. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you. And thank you to Vanessa and Sir Anthony. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Amazing. Let me start with the only family office we have in this panel discussion, Hadi. Let me start with you and some perspective from the family office. Within Al Hayati Group, you have active operation in real estate and construction on a global scale. So can you please share with us your general view on the market? Hadi, just remove the mute. Yeah, exactly.
I remove what?
No. Just I'm telling you about the mute. Go ahead.
Okay. So as I said to you, we are going through a turbulent times, and things is rapidly evolving within the real estates. But my father has said, and a lot of people said the same, real estate can go sick, but never die. And I find the market now, with all what is happening with this COVID-19, which in my own view, through reading and seeing all what is happening around us, especially when you are at home, you have nothing to do except to read the news and listen and go to social network. I find this is a planned pandemic, Corona. It's just been done for a reason, and everybody will be affected in one way or another. But if you look around the world, that you will find most of the businesses, if it is not 80, maybe 70, are owned by family. And the family, you know, if they know what they do, if they plan their work and work their plan, they will always get out of this problem. And talking about the effect of it, especially in our region and in particular in Bahrain, our government in the GCC has put a lot of stimulus and support to keep the business going on. And they have also helped people, as you know, in the Gulf, maybe about 65 is all the population are youth, and youth are always looking for real estate, especially in the private sectors. Everybody wants to have a roof. So the government, with all what is happening, have helped people with very low interest mortgage, and sometimes even subsidies, and sometimes even paying interest-free loan to the people so they can buy their home. So the demand in real estate in the private sector is really growing. And I also find it into the luxury segment of the real estate. People which has been now for 3 months not being able to travel, and they don't think they want to travel and have a holiday this summer. They are buying apartment and villa right in front of the beaches. As you know, Bahrain is an island. So this business is growing, and it's not really being affected. And people, especially when they buy their home, they think it is an investment. And I also learned, and that was from my father, normally people, when they get married and they start having a family, they build their own home, and then they think this home is not fitting their requirement when they have children, so they sell it. Then they build another one, or they go and buy another one. And when they find that one also is not as what they require, they start rented, and then they end up in the third one. So there is always a demand on that. I think what will be affected into the market is the business and the commercial sort of properties. Now, with people finding themselves staying and working from home, So they said, why don't we do that, you know, and save spaces? And instead of having a lavish and big offices, let's make it smaller and try to rearrange our requirement according to this, because this COVID-19, they said it's going to stay and we're going to live with it like any other disease. But as long as we don't have the fears, and that's a very big problem. When people are fearing, they could react in a negative way. But if they look into the right way and they just think this is something, we have to live with it and get used to it and carry on in life.
Yeah. Thank you, Hadi. Let me take the US perspective with the grant now. Grant, in the US, you have now more than 40 million people who have applied for initial jobless claims. I don't know how many have lost their jobs permanently since the pandemic. So how would this reflect in the US market? Because I've seen you in a recent interview saying that this is when it becomes the moment to buy. The question is what to buy and when exactly to do so.
Is that for me?
Yes, for you.
I didn't know if I was the only American here, so. So, you know, this is, first of all, the apartment market is unbelievably strong. Regardless of all the bad news, what you see in the media and then what happens in the world, A-, B+ minus, garden style, large 300 unit complexes that really are unique to America, style of living is doing extremely well. As you go down the eco chain to C quality properties, that's where they start getting hurt. About 80% of the unemployed people in America, the 40 million, make under 40,000 a year. Our strike mark in the multifamily, and I'll talk about the other space. Our strike point is $1,500 a month, US dollars, nice property, swimming pools, amenities, a lot of security in the Southeast. So from Austin all the way to Florida, staying away from some of the no offense, but some of the more states where the landlord is not protected. We're avoiding New York, Illinois, New Jersey, California. The landlord, the owner, doesn't really own that property anymore in those because you can't control the tenant. Retail is getting just pummeled here, but I think that will create an opportunity. I'm actually looking in retail for the first time because it will create opportunity. I just said real estate gets sick, but it never dies. I like that. Office will be affected, but I think it's going to be positively affected over the next 36 months because people are going to want more space, not less. And industrial, the warehouse are probably open in America because of the Amazon effect. Single family homes, the last one, is going to be greatly negatively impacted in America. I think the luxury home will do extremely well here, but the average person in America does not have the disposable income for the down payment, will not have the credit rating to get a loan unless the government just makes it really, really easy. But even if they do, Americans right now, because jobs are moving, needs mobility. And the mobility factor, we have a third of our population is a baby boomer. The other third is a millennial. And both of those groups of people do not want a home right now. They want mobility to move around the United States for jobs and opportunities. The baby boomer's not going to work again. And is the ability to retire and travel, not retire in their home.
Thanks, Grant, for these thoughts. I'm just worried if we make it very easy for consumers to take loans, then we're going to be probably facing another subprime mortgages a couple of years into the future. But yeah, it's a very interesting point. Ahmed, you also operate in many regions. And if you can tell us, how did you see the real estate landscape changing over the past 3 months?
I think, I mean, in my opinion, and this is just a personal opinion as someone that owns the business here, and, you know, we have operations in many countries. What's going to change, you know, long term and short term, my opinion, is what happened with this Zoom phenomenon, you know, the Zoom or Microsoft Teams. I'm someone that if you have asked me 3 months ago what Zoom, I've had no idea. You know, I was not using it. I've been told you can operate and do Zoom calls, work from home, or, you know, instead of some of your travels, you know, I used to travel a lot to use Zoom, but it just, we wouldn't do it, you know? And then I think it took a pandemic to make everyone around the world used to using Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And I think this is going to have very interesting effects on real estate. Zoom, as someone that probably the past 2 months I've done maybe about 500 Zoom calls with everywhere in the world. It has a lot of efficiencies and its own culture, you know. Probably out of my 500 Zoom calls I did, 95% of people, you know, they show up on time when it's scheduled. Or once, you know, on the Zoom call, they're focused, they don't play with their phones, you know, things happen very efficiently, and it saves a lot of time for people. So I think this is going to be the longer lasting effect of pandemic. It will going to be the culture change, you know, from face-to-face meetings or office meetings to, you know, to virtual space and Zoom. And that's, I think, is going to change the landscape of commercial real estate. But I think it's going to have a positive effect on people's leisure and entertainment spending, because once you work from home and, you know, you're all day home and, you know, you don't have the stress of commute or going to office, you want to go out at night. You know, once the market's open, I think more and more people, instead of, because on a pre-pandemic case, if you're working in the office, when you go home on a weekday, you just want to relax. You don't want to go out. So I think when the markets open up and there is some sort of safety, people that are working from home are going to start going out, you know, on a weekday at night and spend on leisure and entertainment. So it may, and it will affect commercial real estate, but I think it will bring some positivity to other segments. Residential market, you know, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. The urban millennials, you know, they may move from downtown areas to suburbs, you know, for a while to live in single family houses, but I'm sure they're going to get bored after a year and just, you know, move back to downtown area. And hospitality, in my opinion, anything with a beach access or resort between the staycation demand and, you know, and when the market open up, that's not going to be affected. I think it's going to be really, actually will be the opposite. Whoever lives in Dubai knows that if you want to book a hotel room with beach access this weekend in Dubai, it's fully sold out, or other Emirates. So people are doing a staycation. There's going to be a challenge with urban hotels or business hotels, but I think there's creative ideas that you can, you know, convert those to short or longer term rental income properties. And as far as retail, brick and mortar, it was suffering before the pandemic. So it's going to affect it, and it's going to get more creative, that space. Logistics, data centers, they're not going to be affected. And I think they're going to, because of, you know, rise of e-commerce, they're going to do much better than any other asset class. So this is my overall view on different asset class of real estate and how pandemic will change it. But the commercial real estate is going to be the one that's going to lag behind the others to recover, in my opinion.
Then let us ask the commercial expert as well, Fakhreddin here. Grant, he spoke about the Amazon effect, and Hamid brought also the commercial space with the Zoom effect probably. So how are you looking at commercial real estate now, and what could be done? If you can just share your thoughts on this. Fakhruddin? I think we're having a little freeze here. Okay, I'll get back to Fakhruddin when he gets connected again. George?
Thank you.
Fakhruddin, okay.
That I said to others. Okay. I was saying that we boarding hospital, which is a real estate. Then they take us home, which is the real estate, and then send us to the school and university and college, which is real estate. And then we travel, we stay in a hotel, and we go to the shopping malls, and then get retired and spend. So there is no single day in real life without real estate. I agree with Grant and Ahmed regarding industrials that due to positive income shows in Amazon, there are a lot of funds that they are having acquisition of logistics leased by Amazon because it's a secure tenant and long lease. Regarding commercial, if we go to hospitality, some of the assets they are spending their capex on refurbishment and changing the furniture and get ready to come back when the situation is over. And some of them are in talk to change the usage and conversion to co-living. That might make more sense if you're supposed to go to suburban area and you need to just come back for some meetings to the city. You might prefer to go and use such facilities. I have a question here from the audience and saying that do you think demand from people may be looking to use co-living space inside the city as a residential solution now that their second home has become their first home? It's very much possible. Like if we're supposed to work remotely, we can go and stay in our holiday home, enjoy the weather, and whenever is needed, we come back to the city. In terms of healthcare, commercial assets, the demand is still high. And what will be left is, I think I said about all.
Thank you, Fakhruddin. We'll get back to you to get into more details as well. But let me move now to George Azar. So George, you specialize in luxury properties, and I believe that your type of customers are not the ones who lose their jobs. So how are your clients thinking at this stage? And are they taking the opportunity probably to benefit from the drop in prices, or they're reluctant to invest now?
Actually, it's probably one of the best questions so far. Listen, I mean, we've been in the market for 6-7 years. We've built our company slowly but gradually. And we've really focused on purely on transactions roughly above 10 million dirham, which is around $3 million. So probably 96% of our deals lie in $3 million plus in general. I can tell you in the last probably 40 days, we've had the most amount of inquiries in the last 7 years, which tells me from a banker perspective, because I'm originally a banker for 20 years, is that people with cash think now it's an opportunity to buy. So they're jumping and throwing in crazy prices. I mean, there is no real distressed sellers in the market. If they are there, they're already cleaned by the bank or cleaned by people who they know. So it's very hard to find really distressed assets in a market, especially on the luxury segment. Now, of course, villas that were selling at 70, now they're selling at 50 million. But you don't find, I mean, we're getting offers that are really awkward offers. I mean, they're not being realistic because they think since the stock market took a tank globally, that real estate is going to follow. Well, if you see the stock market, it already bounced back to probably 0 losses from the COVID, almost, which tells you that how could property prices drop? So we're now in the mid of taking on board one luxury project in the market here exclusively. And I can tell you, we've priced it probably with the most expensive square foot that's ever going to be sold. And we know there is demand on this because, you know, we've just transacted in the last probably 2 weeks. Rentals, each rental we've done is over $1 million dirhams, which are around $300,000, up to $700,000 per yearly rental. Of course, people who have penthouses are moving into villas in areas on the Palm, in Maidan, in Emirate Hills, whatever. But we've seen a lot of demand either by tenants who are in the country or by buyers. But that doesn't really reflect the reality of pricing. I believe people, especially buyers, have a really big misconception on the pricing. They're really trying to take properties that have real value and putting in any value. Now, of course, market is down. There is a lot of issues in the world, but the sellers are not that distressed. It's not 2008. You don't have, you know, large mortgages. You don't have, you know, speculations in a big way. All these things are not there to create that effect to drop all these prices. So we try to educate between buyers and sellers and rationale between both of them to say, maybe you're not that right and you're not that right. So we try to make a middle ground because we know where the market is. We're transacting. We know the pricing that we're transacting at. But some of these prices are, and you know, when people have money, there is a lot of ego. So sometimes the price lies on ego. So both of them have an ego, and then you have to massage that ego to make it work. So other than the pricing, we deal with egos in that world also. So my message on this in short is that we don't believe luxury will have a major downturn in the UAE because there is a lot of wealth and people are still relocating to that part of the world. I mean, Dubai is a regional platform for many countries around it. You know, everybody knows that. So it's never gonna, you know, it's like the Monaco of the Middle East. So people will always want to use it as that platform. They're gonna put their kids in school. It's safe. There is no riots. There is no problems. So it's a country that's under control. So that's why that stability provides confidence and provides prices to be stable.
Thank you, George. Ronald, so I've been now getting so many optimistic views on the real estate, whether it's luxury and also Fakhreddin Hamid touched on hospitality. So you're a private equity group and you have substantial investments in the hospitality sector. But when I hear the news, it looks different to me. It's all like doom and the gloom when it comes to hospitality at this stage. So we need to know what is true. Is it our speaker views or the news that we're hearing every day? What are we missing?
I don't think we're missing anything. I mean, we're hearing the speakers' views of particular sectors of the market. But talking about hospitality, other than airlines and the travel industry as a whole, hospitality has been hit in all the mature markets around the world, including a lot of the resorts. We happen to be in Australia and New Zealand, who have handled the pandemic very well indeed. But when you look at this came on us very, very quickly indeed. The hospitality industry was running at 80% across the board, as it has for many years in Australasia, because it's two of the strongest markets in the world. That 80% was running in what, April? In the first week of March, it started dropping. Second week of March, it dropped dramatically. And at the end of March, it was down to about 15%. And going into April, it was down to 5% across the board. So that happened very rapidly indeed. And we all know that it's affected every single mature economy around the world. Fortunately, I mean, we've adjusted. We can see our way through this pandemic to come out the other end. But let's not kid ourselves. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be a rebound as it was with other, like SARS was. There was a rebound. It was more of a V as far as the chart was concerned. This is going to be quite a elongated L shape coming out of it for the hospitality industry. We're looking at recovery over a 12, 18-month period, maybe up to 24 months to get back to where we are at the turn of this year in hospitality generally. Remember, in Australia, 80% of the hotels were stood down. That's significant, as you would appreciate. However, we're very confident about the market in the future, as and when it returns, and it is showing signs of returning in Australasia. Because of the product we're involved in, which is the Quality Limited Service hotel, which is the business hotel, it works off corporate Australia and New Zealand. We are very confident indeed that as it returns, we are extremely well placed to benefit from that return. But the actual cream on the cake in hospitality's circles is going to be international travel. When will people travel internationally again? And which countries will allow which countries to have an air bridge? That's going to be a difficult call for the countries until there is a form of vaccine available or some protection available against this pandemic. And that's going to be the most difficult call of any country. My colleagues early on made the point about people working more from home. I think that will be a benefit, I think, coming through the other side of this pandemic, that more people will work from home, but it will depend on the business that their particular company's in. But it could put less pressure on commercial space, large offices. Hot desking's been around for years, as we all know. Some businesses it works for, some businesses it doesn't. I mean, we are a business of running 2 PE funds, 2 billion, approaching 2 billion under management. We're on schedule to return early 20 RRs on our investments to our investors generally. We've just got to put that off for 2 years now. We would have achieved that this year. It's now going to be in 18 months, 2 years' time, when the pandemic is behind us and through it. We've got to remember, there's not a person alive today that's seen the devastation that this has caused. The last one was the Spanish flu over 2 years ago. So, you know, I don't disagree with my fellow panelists that various sectors, certainly the luxury end of the market, for good reason, is going to be okay. And the mid-level, as Grant was pointing out in the States, is still doing all right in residential. So there's going to be pockets that do well. But let's not underestimate the damage that a lot of mature, very, very capable economies have had to endure. And they will recover, but it's going to be a long and slow recovery. But from our point of view, we see it as a challenge now. We have the best properties in the marketplace in Australasia. We're already raising the second fund, and we've got 4 assets in that, which don't open until 2022. So hopefully they've cleared the pandemic by then. I think everybody would wish that to be the case. But the hospitality industry will also adjust to the new norm. We're having to look at the guest journey, because the guest journey in our hotels will be different. People will approach it differently. So it's not doom and gloom. There's a very, very good outlook going forward. But we've come through quite a hard time.
Sure, and thank you for sharing your views on this. Dr. Shuja, let me move to you now. And I don't know if in Saudi and with the Giga projects, you can share any positive development when it comes to real estate.
So I was listening to the panelists. It actually reminded me of my time in 2008 and 9. I was running a portfolio in Dubai for the Dubai government, and about 5 billion of our portfolio was in a range of real estate, from things that were not developed, but the cash flows were already committed, to things that we'd already built in hospitality. Today, I sit in a very comfortable position compared to that, but we're trying to use the same discipline that we used back in 2008 and 9. I'm looking after the funding part of a greenfield. The parent is public investment fund that is well invested. There's no issue around funding and financing. So when I look at Amala, what we have done in the last 2 months is just take the discipline of restructuring and looked through all our projects and said, asset by asset, does it still hold water? So we cannot really compare other economic shocks that we've had because COVID is a global impact. It's affecting a majority of sectors. There's a few like tech and communications that have survived. Real estate is certainly not immune to it, but the comfort that we can look at this project and reshape it if we believe that there is some change to be done. So within that, Amala is focused on wellness and sports, on arts and culture, on marine and stability, and it's in a remote location, and it's at the ultra luxury sector. So I have conversations with George and others who are dealing with luxury and trying to touch that ultra luxury and very high luxury segment that is thankfully immune to this, no pun intended. So we feel that the segment is correct. And so we haven't changed our view on do we actually go to different segments. In terms of occupancy and ADRs, occupancy was already around the 50% because these are meant to be sparsely occupied resorts. So that hasn't been impacted, although we've modeled occupancy to go lower, certainly in different parts of the resort, such as food and beverage, for example. ADRs relatively insensitive at that level, but again, we have to be careful as stock, say there's a stock market reset in the US and globally, there will be an impact on global income, but certainly currently COVID, that group of people have made billions of dollars rather than lost billions of dollars in the short term. So we've gone through that in terms of wellness, which is one of our pillars. We believe we are perfectly positioned for wellness now. It was already an area that the high net worth individuals have been looking at, but now we're trying to work out innovations around immunology, around longevity, tailored product for wellness. And although we're a greenfield, we are getting calls from people saying, what is your approach to vaccines? And we obviously don't have an approach to vaccines. We're ultimately an ultra luxury resort, but we're talking to the individuals around the wellness space around this. And then the best thing I've found in the last 2 months with any project, but especially greenfield, you talk to co-investors or potential co-investors and especially lenders, they're the best critics of any business plan, because if we can't get it funded, whether from our parent or from other lenders and co-investors, that means that the project is just in our head and it's not real. And in this particular case, we've had good success as we've been talking to investors. Obviously, a project like Amala has almost every sort of real estate, all the way from infrastructure to staff village, to hospitality, to some very unusual experiential assets. So we see that large range. So we're able to touch a lot of the lenders and a lot of the family offices who are saying, where do I put this money to work that will start generating returns in 5 to 7 years' time?
Thank you, Dr. Shuja. We'll get back also to the greenfield projects as well. Nicola, I believe that you have delivered numerous projects, whether it's in Asia, Middle East, and Africa. And now it looks like the adaptive reuse is becoming an urban trend. So probably somebody are questioning now how to repurpose real estate at this stage.
Actually, that was one of our main topics that we were just involved in a feasibility recently. And you're right, our projects have ranged, and predominantly in the hospitality resort side and casino. So our projects have ranged from Guam all the way to New Zealand and everything in between. But one area that I think is particularly interesting is the adaptive reuse of space. And this it is already an urban trend. But many, and we're seeing this across America and Australia, actually, where large department stores are sadly going bankrupt. Most of those are major inner city, and I can actually include Auckland in this too, but most of those are inner city prime locations. Most of them have not maxed out the GFA, so they have, far greater height limits to the existing mall. So we were looking at how do we reoccupy those sites and what do we do? Again, someone mentioned co-living. I think there's more room for that. We've talked about inner city hotels, but extended stay, longer stay. We've talked about shelters, actually. Jeff Bezos of Amazon dedicated and reused a commercial office in America for shelter for homes. We need to give more homes to people across the world, actually, as well as inner city in hot climates, indoor arenas for children, themed play centers are across the world, predominantly in Dubai, Singapore, very successful. So I think it's a real time to actually be creative with these spaces and also bring living back into city centers. So I think, as I say, as a designer, we're excited about this opportunity. Someone also mentioned hotel. Obviously, we're all talking about hotels and designing those spaces, and the reflection on commercial office. Well, a hotel can actually be an office as well. Your room can be a restaurant. So we've got to think a hotel can actually be, if designed well and next to a hospital, can be a step-down hospital. So I think we've got to think about the real estate and how we develop that for today and the future, and really the next 10 to 15 years.
Thank you, Nicola. Very interesting views. Probably this is also a way of thinking out of the box. Grant, let us move a little bit into numbers. And I would like to know, you have a huge portfolio in the real estate. I want to know, how was the cash flow affected, especially those paying rents? Do you have any stats or figures that you can provide? And also, do you view the current environment as a valuation issue or a value issue?
So, number one, our collections are almost 99%. Our occupancy is at almost 94%. This is not off much from January, pre-COVID. We are suburban, typically suburban. We don't do inner city stuff. We haven't gone for the trends here. So maybe that's partly responsible for it, but we're very active on our management side. We own 8,007 states, and those numbers are across the board. So it's not a small portfolio. We're active. I'm looking at a deal from a major group for $1 million that take down right now. And again, this is all apartment, income producing, 6% first year, very, very low. Very few, there's a disparity right now between the seller and the buyer. This has been brought up a number of times. He brought it up, Ronald brought it up, that the expectation from others might be, oh, I get a huge discount. We're not looking for a huge discount here. We're looking for great properties in great locations that we're going to keep for 10 years. So the other advantage that I have here is that we are, because of crowdfunding and social media, I am able to access the retail investor today in America and outside the U.S. I'm able to access the retail investor and bypass J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and the big banks. So this has never been done before in this country, where I can go straight to the public, raise money from them, year term, not a 3 or 4 or 5 year term. Literally have the discretion to extend 10 years if I choose to. Literally, it's a 20-year fund if I want it to be. And I don't have Oregon or institution telling me how to run my property, which is a massive advantage. So again, we look for very large properties. We're going to sell to institutions, by the way. I'm targeting properties that I will sell to Blackstone, who has $100 billion in cash right now of dry. You can't have a real estate, the real estate bottom can't fall out if I have whales swimming in the waters with a $250 billion in cash. You can't have the bottom fall out. So if it's a great location, it's cash producing, the institutions have to deliver assets that produce cash so they can. So the damage we're seeing in hotels right now, to my friends that are in the hospitality, damage here is like, it is severe. The retail is severe. But you see, the institutions, they own in all those spots. They're so big that there's so much money that they're going to be in 5 different real estate environments, meeting in 4 of them, and then sell their apartments to cover up their losses across the rest. So that's where I'm out focused on how can I purchase from some of these larger institutions, yield, because let's face it, there's a shortage of yield that's on the planet wide. You just can't find them. Netflix doesn't produce cash. General Electric doesn't produce dividends. General Motors, Ford Motor Company, major can't even. So anything that, in our mind, anything that produces yield to the consumer, to the investor is going to become more and more desirable, and I believe will actually compress cap rates. As treasuries continue to drop to 0, cap rates will continue to compress. It produces a yield, a dependable yield, a cash flow, like you asked, Hassan, will be a desirable asset.
Thanks, Grant, for sharing. Of course, yield has become scarce nowadays, but as you mentioned, not just treasury yields, but yields across the globe have been falling to 0 or below. Hamid, as you can see, Grant is still very aggressive into the retail space. If you can share with us Ayana's view on the investment climate now.
I think what one sector that we're looking at, and again, because we have all the different companies and expertise in-house from design, fit out, furniture, IT, technology, what we're trying to do, and it's not a new concept to the Western world, but I think in Middle East, we're looking for assets to reposition them. That's what we're looking, either as a service provider or as an investor. You know, we're working on both angles because I think there's going to be a lot of buildings and assets starting from city of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, that they can have a better use and they can be converted to something more profitable, and we acquire them and then we exit. For example, just anyone familiar with Dubai, let's say on Sheikh Zayed Road, you see a 2-story shopping center or 3-story shopping center that the footfall was already low, you know, before pandemic, and now it's going to hurt it more. I mean, nothing has stopped you to for example, to add a level of residential on top. If you take a property of 50,000 square foot, You know, you can get 100 apartments out of it. The parking should be okay with the retail. MEP should be there. The structure would be there. So all of a sudden you have within, you know, one single use asset, you can create a mixed use development, and those residential can have amazing views of Burj Khalifa, and they can have their own rooftop, and you add some office space and some creative entertainment and working space, and all of a sudden you have something that's not producing much income or is fairly vacant to something that's going to become a successful asset if you can hold it for 2 to 3 years. I mean, this is Blackstone does that as grant, you know, they buy, sell and fix, but in this market, we don't see much of that happening. I mean, the Middle East builds the largest and biggest and on vacant brownfield development, but on asset repositioning, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities here.
Thanks, Hamid. Fakhreddin, let me move to you now. And I can see that we have different perspective in some regions. Do you think that the geographic location matters at this stage? Does it make difference between being in the US or the UAE, for example?
It definitely matters. I can give you example like in West, in US, more residential properties are in debt. For those who might lose their job, they will lose their home, and they need to look for renting properties. Even staying home might increase the divorce, and that also causing new problems. This is a fact. For that reason, in US, we will see a demand increase for residential properties to rent. In Europe, they have a chance of drive down to South Europe and stay in their summer into Spain and Italy and France.
We lost Fakhreddin.
So it doesn't, I think I was not stable, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying in Europe, it's a different way in hospitality assets because you can drive down to South Europe, to South Spain, South France, South Italy. It doesn't need to wait for airports to be open. And it's a norm for Europeans to come down to the south in the summer and spend their time there. So when we talk about properties, it's better if we be more niche and be more specific about the asset class. Some of them are general, like if there is any asset class of Amazon long lease in any location worldwide, we have a demand to purchase it. And I might agree also that now our challenge is not the investor. Our challenge is a good asset to do the acquisition. We are having huge demand for assets that are long lease, strong tenant, and income generating. And as Grant said, it's unlimited. Whatever asset is available in the market and meet this requirement, there is existing investors that are waiting for that. Not only the real estate is not going to be easily go down, as Nicola said, it's possibility of conversion. I don't know if there is any other investment that you can convert it to something else and it's going to benefit you. I find real estate more like energy. It can change from one to another without dying. So if hotel is not working, let's go to co-living. If co-living is not in demand, you go to co-working. And nowadays, I think after this pandemic, people will prefer to live in a multi-use community, that they have everything within community, that if they are in lockdown, they don't need to go out. They can do their purchases from the retailers and they can go for the office next door. That is what I can say.
Thank you, Fakhreddin. George, so you come from a banking background and also in the real estate business. And we can see now that most industry leaders are trying, or they're seeking to strike this kind of right balance probably between capital preservation and further strengthening their competitive differentiation and advantage. So how can you gain competitive advantage in such environment now?
I mean, I've been listening to Bahrain on the investment side, and I think competitiveness comes mainly when there is uncertainties, there is always opportunities, and I do believe that most of the money that smart people make, they make it in uncertain time, not in certain times. So today, the Middle East is not as developed as the US or Europe in terms of, like here, most of the businesses and the hotels and meaning hospitality, healthcare, they're actually owner of the asset and operator. So they are on both sides of the trades. Where you see in Europe or in the US, they're either on the light side or on the heavy side, either owners of the assets or they're all the operators. So they're able to separate that because you create more value. The operation business has a value and the asset itself has a value. And I think the first company in the Middle East, which was, I think, smart enough to think about that was Emaar, when they start selling their real estate, their hotels, right? Why? Because they wanted to become an operator. So they start getting rid of the heavy assets that for them has no real, value in terms except as an asset value, to utilize that money into different ways. So I believe the opportunity today in the Middle East lies on the hospitality asset. Today, you would go to any hotel operator in the Middle East who has multiple assets, right? We're not going to name them because probably most of you know them. Some of them are government institutions, some of them are family offices, some of them are, huge companies. Our job is to actually go to them and actually educate them. This is the way forward. I mean, today they are at the crossroad. They either want to own the asset or they want to operate it. Some of them have some very high brand, like the address that Emaar has. So it's a global brand today. So Emaar decided to reduce its exposure on the asset itself. I do believe there is a big opportunity today to go speak to these asset holders and either do a sale leaseback where you can get an easy, as Grant was saying, that yield is disappearing. Today in the Middle East, you can still earn on a sale leaseback roughly around 7% on a 10-year asset. You're talking about the prime asset from a location perspective, either it's going to be beach or downtown or something really key. So the asset will hold its value. Banks will finance you on it. The operator is a big operator in the Middle East. It's not the global one because the global ones come out here, but the homegrown brands have that advantage today to actually separate those businesses. I think the opportunity today in the Middle East going forward, especially Dubai, because it's a holiday destination. And I do believe Abu Dhabi, I don't know who are the owners of these assets in Abu Dhabi, but Abu Dhabi could be also a holiday because it is a holiday. Also, Ras Al Khaimah is a holiday destination. So you need to separate the operator from the, someone like a Rotana. I don't know who owns these assets. Is it the Rotana owner or is it separate? Somebody needs to do some homework there. I think there is a lot of value in our market that's in a problem like this. People think, now we're going to do all work on Zoom for the rest of our life. I don't believe so. I believe in 2 years from now, we would go back to normal. I personally believe that because I don't want to live like this for the next, for the remaining of my life. So I believe once we go back, we're going to look at this, say, oh my God, there was this opportunity in the hospitality sector. Well, I do believe in it strongly. And touching base also, in opportunities. When Dr. Shujaat mentioned, we've done some work with them on Amala. And I do believe, you've put, the Red Sea, people go to Egypt to love because the Red Sea is the Red Sea. The corals, it's even more beautiful than the Maldives because I've been there on site with them to look at the projects. Once you build all these big high brands, residence, hospitality, it's not, you cannot look at it as, it's like the Maldives. People, when they go to the Maldives, they go because it's a place which is different than the world. So I think the Red Sea will provide that. And the project Amala has that. So believe me, for investors looking for something different, because capital and money is available in the Middle East. People, when they go, European businesses depend in the summer on Middle Eastern to go and spend money in London, in Switzerland, in Paris. So, they wait for the Middle Eastern. So if we had a destination like Amala, that's going to be a 10-month destination. It's not going to be probably in fashion for 2 months, but 10 months is going to be packed. So for us, we need to look at these opportunity regionally, and for international investors to look at us like a destination, not only of outgoing money, but more of yield, of getting yield, getting stability, and getting being an early investor. So I do believe these opportunities are there in the market, whether it's the Amala, whether it's the hospitality sector in the UAE, which is heavily owned by operators, and they operate it and they also own it, which is, I think, it's not a smart idea going forward.
Thank you, George. Ronald, you discussed hospitality in the first question. And as George just mentioned, that there's so many capital to be deployed, and you also have a cash on the sidelines. So in which sectors do you see opportunities? And you can tell me, what does it take to access such opportunities today? Ronald, can you just activate the mic? Yeah.
Such opportunities in the hospitality sector, you need platforms such as ours, because you need to, as my colleagues have made out, property is very flexible. You need to be able to reposition it, rebrand it, to maximize its return. But just taking up the point that George made, splitting the asset from the management, that's something we've always done with a PropCo and OpCo structure. That's a logical way forward in hospitality, and it's the right way forward. Investors, I mean, Grant made the point, there's a lot of investment capital out there, and that investment capital has different appetites. Some of it would suit what the panelists have been outlining with regard to repositioning, changing the uses of buildings, doing development. But there's also a lot of capital that look for straightforward yield with growth and capital appreciation. And we as a business meet both those. The investors that come on the journey with us through development, through to creating the asset and trading it for a few years during the life of the fund, benefit from the development profit and free cash and the capital appreciation at the end of the day, and they see a late teens return. There's then the investors that are yield investors, similar to the investors that the Grant's organization appeal to, and that is that are looking for good, stable yield that grows over a period of time. And at the end of the day, there's a capital appreciation further down the track. The investors do fall into those categories, but there is an awful lot of investors out there that are looking for opportunities, and I think the panel has discussed many areas where there are opportunities. In our own industry, in hospitality, yes, there are opportunities. We're already seeing companies that have come under pressure because they have not got enough on the balance sheet or enough headroom to see their way through this pandemic. Although in Australasia, they've received a lot of help from the government of Australia and New Zealand to do so. But we're seeing the opportunities, and we're best able to buy those in and maximize the potential of those opportunities. But they are coming through. It's a shame it's been created through the pandemic and the way it's hit the market. But if they're coming through in Australasia, we're already seeing them in Asia, a lot in Asia, and elsewhere in the world, as far afield as Europe. So, I'd agree with Grant that there's a lot of investors that are looking at this moment in time. They're looking for safety, they're looking for yield, and they're looking at long-term, low-risk investment that gives them a good yield, growing yield going forward. But they're always the investor that's looking for the increased return through development.
Fantastic, Ronald, thank you very much. And Dr. Shuja, So you spoke about greenfield projects. For me, it sounds like also more like ESG investments. If you can take us through what are the pros and cons of ownership in greenfield projects?
I think Ronald and a number of guys have mentioned yielding assets, and I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of investors in banks as well as family offices. And so one of the issues with a greenfield project is that it does not start yielding for a while. But what I've noticed in the last month or so in our discussions is that the investor knows there are not high yielding assets out there. They like the comfort of a sovereign standing at the back end of it. So this is not a sovereign guarantee, but there's a comfort that there's a sovereign behind this if things go wrong. And so we are discussing, and it hasn't come to fruition yet, so there's no concrete example, but we are discussing how do you bridge the time between now and the yield starting. And I'll give you an example of a discussion we had. Someone approached us, a family office out of UK, who said, we're very interested in your staff village because it's about a 7% yielding asset from 2023 and onwards. And we don't mind that wait. We have to figure out how to bridge that. That will be a bridge loan of sorts. But we have started to discuss something completely different, which is that they've noticed that we have a need for infrastructure capital investment, and they don't actually mind call it a 4% return sort of paper just for that bond to cover that part. And it's a much larger number. And why? Because that investor sees that I like that yielding asset, but it's not ready. And we had a good discussion around that bridge between now and that point, but it wasn't in their comfort zone. And so we ended up doing or talking about a different transaction. So I think there are those advantages that we have, or at least I've noticed in the last month or so, that we are trying to be creative with these co-investors around how can you get them the returns that they want. And very much like Ronald said, some are happy to take high risk. So they are very willing to talk about a 10-year IRR of 20 to 30%. And they, again, with the sovereign sitting at the tail end saying, will we be able to complete this project? But there are others who just don't want that level of risk. So it gives you the advantage to talk to that spectrum of investors and pick the sweet spot for them. But certainly in the last month or so, very creative discussions on both sides.
Fantastic, Dr. Shujaa, thank you. Again, Nicola, so as you can see, that there's a lot of focus on yield nowadays. And you spoke about adaptive reuse and real estate. So how this fits with your thoughts now and probably business action? Nicola, you're still on mute. Yeah.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Oh.
I think one is it depends on who owns the original asset to begin with, and then how it will be developed over the timing. So I think that needs, and again, everyone tonight seems to be mentioning yield, so that's quite an interesting one. The other area we're seeing, certainly in my region, Asia Pacific, is again, the adaptive reuse in terms of student accommodation. That's one under the sort of, in terms of occupancy that people haven't talked about on this panel, because I know it's more in terms of luxury hospitality, but that's an area that also in a city we've added to the list in terms of adaptive use of space. So I think that one needs considering also. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure, Nicola. Thank you very much. Hadi, let me conclude this panel with you from my side. And I think that we spoke a lot about real estate and we covered almost every aspect. We can get back to the Q&A just after this question. Hadi, can you tell me what will family businesses look like post COVID-19?
Okay, thank you very much, Hussein. I don't think maybe you all remember, some of you they were not there in the beginning of the session. As in my own way of thinking, I think this is the COVID-19 is a planned pandemic, you know. So with that, there are some losers and there are some winners. And if you just think from the size of the winner size, one of the things which the COVID-19 has done, kept us inside the box. I mean, inside the house. So we are close to our family. We meet them, we listen to them during this 3 months. So we were looking at things from a perspective, and we always believe it's nice to go against the trend. And as some of the panelists said, you should have to take calculated risk, because taking risk sometimes brings you a lot of profit. So as a family business, we began to determine the way forward of what we should do. And I think every family should ask themselves 5 questions. Who is their targets, customer? What is the products and service category? And what is the greatest benefit of their product and service? And what is the proof of that benefit? And how can we hedge against future dispersion? Because there will be always a problem and there will be always a crisis. Just if you look back to 2008, if people was just thinking of that bad things and becoming phobia of investment and going forward, we wouldn't have reached where we are today. But as I said, there is a lot of opportunity, especially in the family business, because they always have funds. And especially now, when we are having this shock of the COVID-19 and the fall of prices of oil. And as you know, ourselves here in the GCC, we are only oil producing country. So that could affect a lot into the GDP, into the income. But government which have got creative thinking in the Gulf, they have looked and thought of diversificating from the just oil producing to downstreaming, to new things. And they have involved the private sector, the family business into this. So they bring them in to strengthen these family business, because some of them goes for years and they don't want, because if the family business collapse, especially in this part of the world, you will find banks, private companies, semi-government company, they are all built from investment of this family into these sectors of the business. So I think this is a very good lesson for us to learn from. And especially when we are kept at home and we work out from home, it makes us more creative of thinking of things, especially in the technology way. I mean, Zoom is one of them. We were doing all our business, we're meeting all through Zoom meeting. Our government, you know, the cabinets, ministers, semi-government company, multinational company, they all meet now through this technology of Zooms and distance. And I think at the end of the day, this pandemic, the corona, is going to make people more careful of how they move forward. And there will be always more concentration onto the family meetings and the value of things, and especially bringing the young generation for the succession plan of how can they take the business. Being close to them during these 3 months, learning from their idea, finding ways and bringing new things, and thinking more of business from the services more than the products and the manufacturing, because that's easy to manage and that's easy to invest in and doesn't need a lot of man to be involved in it, you know, especially using today's technology in the services.
Thank you very much, Hadi, and to all the speakers. Vanessa, I don't know how much time remaining we still have, but probably we can take a couple of questions through you, Vanessa.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Hussein. So we have a question here for Grant Cardone, and the question goes like this. May I ask if we are planning for the impact of a potential second wave of COVID-19 and the impact to industries? The Spanish flu taught us that the second wave could be worse than the first. Could this come as early as April 2021? And knowing this, could this lead to some strategic purchases?
So, one of my businesses outside of real estate is the event business. I do events almost as big as Anthony, Sir Anthony. And like last year, we did 12,800 people at Mandalay Bay. The year before that, we did 34,000 people in Marlin here in Miami. For 3 in February of 2021, we will do 15,000 people in Las Vegas. People that want to come to live events right now. In America, with you see probably the turn the TV on, we have all this rioting going on, this stupid social distancing, the mask, the concept of this thing is already over here. Like all you gotta do is turn the TV on, turn it on to CNN. Social distancing today. Are worried about their money right now. And I think that this is every sector of society. The low end, I think it's wealthy people are worried about their businesses. The middle sector is always worried about their money. And investors are worried about their money. I know guys in London right now that have some of the most successful retail for the last 50 years. They're worried about losing their stores. They're worried about, and in confidence, they've shared with me, pay attention to what the world is in a position. If the real estate was in trouble before the epidemic, it is in more trouble now. And so this is going to be definitely an opportunity, whether there's a second wave or not. I'm certain there's going to be probably be a third wave. But I could just tell you in America right now, what's going on here. One, there is tremendous amounts of unrest that is being blamed on one thing, but the truth is it's economics. 40 people are out of work. While that's a terrible thing, extremely well for housing. And after America, housing in America after 9/11, it wasn't because interest rates went down. It's because consumers wanted to contract into their home. They wanted to be protected. They wanted to have a sense of security for families. And I believe in this cycle, what will happen is, particularly here in America, people will return, they will let their cars go back. If they lose their job, they will let their cars go back to the manufacturers. They'll walk away. They'll let their homes go if they have to, okay? They still need a place to live. And I don't think that America right now at least America has its attention on a second wave. I think it has attention on how do we rebuild our country? How do I get my purpose back? How do I take care of my family?
And you have a great opportunity, with your platform, Grant, to be able to offer these people throughout the USA and around the world, you know, the opportunity to think outside the box and to give them hope for the future.
Yeah, Vanessa, can you have any other questions to the panelists?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So the next question was actually for Ahmed here, which is, how do you view the asset type of co-living? Do you see this as a fad or an upcoming type of accommodation for millennials, but also executives with families? Do you think demand from people may be looking to use co-living space inside cities as a residential solution now that their second home has become their first home?
I think so too. I mean, I won't call it co-living, I'll call it flexible living. I mean, just to say co in this environment, you know, it might not bring the right picture, but I think flexible living, you know, can be a new type of asset that's going to pop up everywhere. And an asset and hotels can be converted, offices can be converted, that you have basically your living space, and then you have recreational facilities, you know, at the ground floor, and F&B open to outside and to your to the residents. So I think it's going to do well.
Thank you so much.
Vanessa, we can just take one more question. As Hadi mentioned at the beginning, I tried to keep it on time always, so I'm trying as well this time.
No. Sorry. Okay, last question. I have a question here for George Azar. And the question goes like this. With businesses slowly turning their engines back on post-lockdown across the world, how much of an impact on the return to the new normal will equipment have, such as sanitizing stations, temperature checking machines, etc., in the real estate sector? Would you be less willing to visit a building if you didn't think they had taken the correct healthcare measures? Or would you be holding off until vaccines, treatments, and medicals were in full production? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm going to give you a life example. I mean, when you're in sales, whether you're in banking with high net worth or with real estate, with, you know, luxury real estate, you deal with it's all about relationship. So you can't meet high net worth, you know, online like this and build relationship and get the comfort and build that relationship. So that requires the personal interaction, right? So during the lockdown in Dubai, most of our senior consultants were actually out viewing. Of course, not people where homes were people living. So these homes were not allowed to visit, but any home that was empty, we were viewing, we were doing, and we were actually doing deals. Not as much as we wish, but we were doing so. In our industry, you know, I mean, I want to use more like the grant approach. We want to get back to normal. We want to get back to business. We want to think how we're going to get better. For me, I mean, we're taking all the precautions from a company perspective, from a staff perspective. We're trying to keep the company alive. But eventually, our business, we're in sales, we're in the transaction business. And these transactions happen when you're meeting these people and they know you, you build relationships. So if you tell me you won't go in a building if it's not sanitized, I'll take the precaution and I'll go there, right? So, because I mean, numbers are start coming in, and for us, you know, Dubai has had the lowest death rate and the highest testing. And, you know, we know very well where the numbers are. So we're trying to avoid these areas and these surroundings. But so it depends where you live. Like in Dubai or in the UAE, it's quite common, the problems, you know, in the COVID where they are, and the death rate is quite low because it's a working society. You don't have, you know, aging expats living here, very few, unless they're retiring and they're being careful. So we're not living like in Italy where you have all these Italians at 70 plus and they're all living in their home and in their gardens. We don't have that here, right? So we are a working society. So people might get away with it, you know. So the chances of you surviving is really high. So we're not really looking at these things in this perspective. We're looking at them more how we can go back to normal. So, but we're taking all the precautions, that's for sure. We're making sure that, you know, we are in line with the government regulations, but we have to go back to business, you know.
hopefully very soon, George, will go back all to business and normal. Thank you to all the panelists who joined us today. It was really interesting conversation that we had, and I truly believe we had so many thoughts outside of the box as well. So thank you very much for all this information that you have shared. And again, thank you, Anthony, Prince Michelle, also for being with us, and Vanessa, you can just do the close-up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the panelists. Again, thank you, Hussein, a wonderful moderator and chairman to our conferences. Sir Anthony, my chairman, thank you so much for putting all of this together. Prince Michelle, our Grand Ambassador for the Monaco Conference coming up end of July 20th to the 30th. Prince Michelle, thank you for everything. And of course, thank you so much to Mohammed Al-Ali for providing us the high patronage of his Sheikh. Gentlemen and lady, dear Nicola, thank you so much, and thank you.